Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today I am once again continuing my fan fiction story for Fallout. It has been a while. I think November 2024 was the last time I added to this storyline, and I thought it would be fun to revisit it. So today I am using one of the 3D prints I printed probably around that same time and continue my story along. So I 3D printed this model that I found that is a bust of a Deathclaw. If you're not familiar with it, it's this massive chameleon / other animal mix-up of things, and it's nasty. So I am going to make this look like it's a deer mount or a big game mount and put it on a little placard and give it a little name tag and paint it up cool. At least the game plan. So today we are continuing our Fallout saga with an introduction to Glowing Gus. Let's get to building. The video descriptions for this will be pretty short, and the majority of the narration is going to come from the story because the build is pretty simple. I hit it with sandpaper, primed it with a gray automotive, and I'm ready to start my story and pick up where we left off. By the time the two vault dwellers from Vault Much Props left Gwinnett Brewery, they had heard enough stories about Glowing Gus to fill a dozen holotapes. Every settlement had a different version of the legend. Some claimed Gus was 12 foot tall. Others swore he could outrun a vertibird, kill a Deathclaw with one swipe, or tear through a power armor like it was made of paper. Most of the stories were obviously exaggerated, a tall tale that some random person heard from a person of a person, but one detail kept appearing in every account. Gus hunted Deathclaws. As the Vault Dweller approached the castle, they suddenly heard a roar that shook the ruined building around them. A massive Deathclaw burst through the rubble and charged. They barely dove aside as its claws tore through the concrete where they had been standing. One of the Vault Dwellers raised the vertibird axe that they had built, but before they could swing, something small and glowing shot across the Deathclaw's back. The enormous creature screamed, staggering, and collapsed. Standing on its corpse was a tiny, dark figure, glowing green and yellow in the darkness. I dabbed a mix of brown, black, white, and burnt ochre to give a texture to my remaining lines of the 3D print. The Vault Dweller stared at the creature. It was only 3 foot 7 inches tall. Is that Gus? They barely finished the question before Gus launched himself at them. He moved so quickly that their weapons were almost useless. One Vault Dweller fired a gun, Gus twisted through the air and landed on the wall beside him. The second swung his axe, and Gus dropped beneath the swing, sprinted between them, and disappeared into the rubble. A heartbeat later, something slammed into the first Vault Dweller from behind and sent him crashing through a wooden door. Gus wasn't large. He didn't need to be. He was incredibly fast, vicious, and frighteningly intelligent. Every attack they made taught him something, and every mistake nearly got them killed. The story about the tiny Deathclaw suddenly didn't seem so ridiculous. Next, I hit all the recesses, his mouth, his tongue, and his eyes with neon green and yellow acrylic paint. it. Desperate to escape, the vault dwellers from Vault Much Props rushed into an old military facility and slammed the door behind them. Gus hit the other side hard enough to shake the entire building. They barricaded the entrance and searched for anything that might help them. Instead, they found a terminal containing a creature designation, DCLW-07. The record revealed that Gus was a fully grown Deathclaw, created before the Great War as part of a military weapon program. His unusual size had originally been considered a genetic defect, but his speed, reflexes, intelligence, and aggression were extraordinary. Then the radiation changed him. His engineered biology adapted to the extreme exposure, making him one of the most radiated living creatures ever documented. The military report contained a simple recommendation at the very end: terminate specimen. The Vault Dweller looked towards the door as the 3 enormous claws punched through it. Looks like they never managed to finish the task of termination. I bought this mount at my local hobby store, but it was way too pristine for my dirty Deathclaw, so I gloved up and proceeded to pummel it with chains, hammers, and anything that I could smack against it to weather it up a bit. The barricade exploded inward. Gus came through that opening like a missile. The Vault Dweller sprinted down the hallway as claws tore through walls behind them. Gus moved through the ruined building like it belonged to him, bouncing off walls, leaping over debris, and striving from impossible angles. One Vault Dweller turned and swung the Deathclaw axe, but Gus ducked beneath it and raked 3 claws across his armor, sending him crashing into the wall. The second Vault Dweller attacked from behind and finally caught Gus across his shoulder. Gus screamed, spun around, and charged. The Vault Dweller barely raised the axe before the impact sent him flying backward. Gus stood over him, his glowing eyes burning through the darkness. Then he smelled the blood on the axe. It was the blood of an enormous Deathclaw the Vault Dwellers had killed earlier. Gus let out a roar and attacked with everything he had. Let's take it a step further and burn the absolute mess out of this. I didn't paint this mount at all, I just caught it on fire a couple of times and then knocked back the char with a Scotch-Brite pad. When I was satisfied with how it looked, I sprayed on a clear coat of varnish. The fight became a blur of claws, steel, and shattered concrete. Gus tore through tables, smashed through walls, and nearly ripped the weapons from their hands. The Vault Dwellers were exhausted, injured, and running out of places to hide, but they realized they had one advantage. Gus was incredibly fast, but his size made him vulnerable in tight spaces. They packed him towards a narrow doorway and waited for him to charge. One of the Vault Dwellers swung the axe. Gus dodged exactly as had been expected. The second Vault Dweller slammed a piece of scrap metal into the doorway behind him, trapping Gus for just a fraction of a second. The first Vault Dweller swung again with everything he had. The vertibird blade struck true. Gus collapsed to the concrete, his glowing eyes slowly fading as the Geiger counter continued clicking beside him. After nearly 200 years, the legend of Gus was finally over. Next step, I simply superglued his head to the mount. The vault dwellers decided they needed proof that they'd taken down the deadliest Deathclaw of all, so with the axe, they chopped off Gus's head and worked their way back towards the castle. They found a piece of pre-war wood that was lying on the ground and thought that would make for a perfect mount. They cleaned the blood from his dark, charred hide and mounted his head in the center of the wooden plank. Even in death, green and yellow light continued to glow beneath his skin. They carved his name into the wood in a very crude fashion, Glowing Gus, a proper monument for an evil foe. This was a true testament of DCLW07, followed by his statistics that most people will probably find impossible to believe. Fully grown adult, over 200 years old, only stood at 3'7". He killed humans in the hundreds, Deathclaws in the dozens, laid waste to handfuls of settlements across the wasteland, and his radiation level extreme. The two vault dwellers stepped back and stared at their trophy. The smallest Deathclaw they had ever encountered had somehow become the most terrifying creature that had ever lived. But the trophy represented more than Gus. It represented what two survivors from Vault Much Props had become. They had escaped Diamond City, survived Deathclaw packs, lost Dr. Sun, built their own weapon, and now they had killed a creature that had survived since the bombs fell. Last edition was to add a name tag for my plaque, and we're almost done. Now let's also wrap up this episode of the story. Word travels quickly through the Commonwealth. Traders began telling stories about the two survivors from Vault Much Props who had killed Glowing Gus. Settlers repeated the tale around campfires, raiders whispered their names before attacking caravans, and even other Deathclaws seemed to avoid the territory around the castle. The story grew with every telling. Some said the Vault Dwellers had fought an entire army of Deathclaws. Others claimed that they had killed Gus with a weapon made from a vertibird. Nobody knew exactly what was true anymore, but somewhere beyond the Commonwealth, another group had started paying attention. The Enclave had intercepted reports about the strange radioactive Deathclaw, the survivors who killed it, and the growing reputation of two Vault Dwellers from Vault Much Props. To the Commonwealth, Gus was a trophy. To the Enclave, he was evidence. Evidence that the two unknown Vault Dwellers were becoming far more dangerous than anyone had realized. They were more than just costume makers. Gus was dead, but his story was not. His legend had only begun, and now the Vault Dwellers had attracted the attention of an enemy far more organized, far more powerful, and far more interested in them than anything they had faced before. The Commonwealth had learned the name Vault Much Props. Now the Enclave had too. I hope you enjoyed this story, and if you liked this series, please let me know in the comments below and share it with people. I'd really love to continue this storyline because it's super fun not only coming up with the props, but also making up stuff as we go. Till next time, keep those stim packs handy.
And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty cool. I definitely like the paint job, and the smell of burnt wood is always nice in the shop. I think it's pretty awesome. And the storyline, I think, kind of fit with the previous one, at least a little bit. So yeah. Maybe we'll try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to pull something from a video game, make up your own story, and nerd out over getting to put something like this on your wall. And at the very least, it could hold something cool like a jacket. Ideas. Maybe you'll get some.
Yay!
And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, much props. You got to put this somewhere so I stop getting rad poisoning from it. Peace out.
If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and you want to see more builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.